What is up, everyone, and welcome back to History Behind the Horror. For today, I have a special episode for you guys talking about one of everyone's favorite horror movie villains, Michael Myers. Horror movie characters have been heavily requested on this channel for as long as I can remember, so I put a post in the community tab asking you guys if it's time to finally go and do horror movie characters, which a lot of people say yes, we should finally do this. So here we are today. So if you do enjoy this video and you'd like to see more horror characters like Jason, Freddy, Chucky, Chainsaw Massacre, make sure you guys like the video, share it, and put in the comments for what you want to see. I based those three off if I should continue doing the series or just stay on video games. Now, video games will be a thing still on this channel. It will still overtake this whole channel, and the movie side will come as a side thing every once in a while once I find the time to do it. Also, I'd like to let you guys know that this is only part 1 of Michael Myers' history. Part 2 will be the second movie, part 3 will be the third movie, part 4 will be the fourth movie, and so on and so forth until the very last movie or more movies be made. Also, these videos will not have any video footage in them whatsoever. They will only be screenshot to screenshot of what I talk about from beginning to end to avoid copyright. So, if you guys do enjoy this video and would like to see more videos made like this one, like I said, make sure you guys give it a like, share it, and put in the comments what you want to see next. And as always, thank you guys for stopping by, and I hope you all enjoy the video. Judith Myers is at home on Halloween night spending an evening with her boyfriend. Judith and her boyfriend eventually leave the living room and go upstairs. Michael then enters the house wearing a clown costume. He goes into the kitchen and grabs a butcher knife out of the drawer, then hides in the living room until he sees the boyfriend leave. After the boyfriend leaves, Michael walks upstairs where he finds his discarded clown mask on the floor. He picks it up and places it over his head. He walks into Judith's bedroom where she is seen sitting in front of her vanity and brushing her hair. Michael begins stabbing her repeatedly. Eventually, she falls out of her chair and onto the bedroom floor where she dies. Michael then walks out of the room, down the stairs and out of the house, where a shocked Mr. and Mrs. Myers arrive home, finding their son holding a bloody butcher knife in his hand. Mr. Myers pulls the mask off of Michael's head, which reveals his blank and expressionless face. It is a rainy night as Dr. Sam Loomis and nurse Mrs. Chambers drive to Smith's Grove Sanitarium. They are charged with transferring their patient, 21-year-old Michael Myers, from the hospital to the Hardin County Courthouse so he can stand trial for his crimes. Loomis warns Mrs. Chambers about how dangerous Michael is. Although the patient hasn't spoken a word in over 15 years, Loomis believes that he is a psychopath. He never wants to see him leave the sanitarium. As they approach the main gate, they notice several of the patients outside wandering about in the rain. Loomis gets out of the car to check the gate, leaving Mrs. Chambers by herself. Michael Myers appears and leaps atop of Mrs. Chambers' car. He reaches inside to grab her, and Mrs. Chambers guns the vehicle. She brings it to a quick stop, however, and exits the car. Michael jumps inside and drives off. In the town of Haydenfield, Illinois, high school student Lori Strode leaves her house and begins walking to school. Her father asks her to drop off a key at the Myers house. Along the way, she comes across young Tommy Doily, whom Lori frequently babysits. She has plans to look after him on Halloween night. As Tommy launches a barrage of questions at Lori, she turns to drop the key off at the Myers house. Tommy warns her that it is a spook house. She slips the key through the mail slot, but there is someone inside the house staring through the window at her. Lori doesn't notice the strange shape peering back at her, but it keeps a close eye on her as she continues walking to school. At Smith's Grove, Loomis argues with hospital administrator Terrence Wynn. He blames him for allowing someone like Michael to escape. Wynn doesn't understand how he could have orchestrated such a breakout, citing that he doesn't even know how to drive a car. Loomis retorts he was doing very well last night. Loomis knows exactly where Michael is going, Haydenfield. At Haydenfield Elementary School, a group of bullies antagonize the smaller Tommy Doily. They circle around him and begin chanting, "The boogeyman is going to get you." Tommy, scared, turns to run but falls and smashes his pumpkin. The kids take off running, one of whom has a chance encounter with the Shape. The Shape, in reality, Michael Myers, gets into the car he has stolen from the hospital and shadows Tommy Doily. 73 miles outside of Haydenfield, Loomis pulls his BMW off to the side and makes a phone call from a payphone to Sheriff Brackett in Haydenfield. He warns him about Michael Myers and tells him that he is coming to Haydenfield. Loomis hangs up the phone and inspects a nearby empty truck. he finds a set of discarded hospital robes in the bushes next to the truck. What he doesn't see is the body of a dead mechanic laying in the underbush only a few feet away. Later in the afternoon, school lets out and Lori meets up with her friends Linda and Annie. Linda complains about all the new cheers she has to learn, while Annie huffs about her boyfriend Paul dragged her in the boys' locker room. As they walk home, Lori stops as she realizes that she has forgotten her chemistry book. A car slowly drives by and Annie shouts at the motorist. The car screeches to a halt, then starts up again. The three girls resume their conversation and go over their plans for Halloween night. Lori is babysitting Tommy while Annie will be babysitting a girl named Lindsay Wallace 3 doors down. Linda has a date with her boyfriend Bob. They continue walking and Lori suddenly sees the shape standing just beyond a hedge. She is disturbed by the strange mask that he is wearing. Just as he quickly appears, he disappears again. Annie, who didn't see the man, inspects the hedge and turns up nothing. She teases Lori, telling her that she scared away yet another potential boyfriend. The girls split up and each of them return to their respective homes. Lori is still on edge about the image she saw. She goes to her house and walks upstairs to her bedroom. She looks out the window and believes she sees the shape standing in the backyard amongst the clotheslines. In the blink of an eye, he is gone again. The telephone in Lori's room suddenly rings and Lori answers it. All she hears is strange noises coming over the line. Startled, she quickly hangs up. The phone rings again and it is Annie. Annie wants to know why Lori hung up on her. Apparently, she had been chewing food the first time she called. She tells Lori that she will pick her up at 6. In a few hours, Annie picks up Lori and they drive off. Meanwhile, Dr. Loomis arrives in Haydenfield. He goes to the cemetery and the graveyard keeper leads him to the grave of Judith Myers. When they get there, however, they discover that the gravestone is missing. Loomis declares he's come home. Annie and Lori keep driving. Lori has a pumpkin with her that she says she's giving to Tommy. She believes that carving jack-o'-lanterns will keep him occupied. Annie intends on subjecting little Lindsay Wallace to 6 straight hours of horror films. Turning a corner, they pull up to a hardware store where they find Annie's father, Sheriff Brackett, standing outside. An alarm is ringing and several other police officers are walking about the scene. Apparently, someone broke inside and stole a bunch of Halloween costumes. Annie and Lori drive off and minutes later, Dr. Loomis arrives. He introduces himself to Sheriff Brackett. While Annie and Lori are driving, they begin discussing their boyfriend troubles. Lori is an introvert and is too shy to ever ask a boy out on a date. She expresses an interest in a student named Bennett. Little do the girls realize the shape is following them around town in his stolen car. Evening falls and the shape continues to follow Annie and Lori. He pauses while Annie drops off Lori at Tommy's house. Annie then pulls into the Wallace driveway directly across the street. The shape gets out of the car and watches as Annie talks with Mr. and Mrs. Wallace. Meanwhile, Dr. Loomis meets back up with Sheriff Brackett. They go to the old, closed-down Myers house. Wandering through the first floor, they find the partially eaten remains of a dead dog. Brackett cannot believe that a man would do this, but Loomis reminds him, this isn't a man. The two men go upstairs and Brackett shows him Judith Myers' bedroom. Loomis tells Brackett about his history with Michael Myers. He details how he spent 15 years studying Michael only to determine that there was nothing inside this child's mind but pure evil. At Tommy's house, Lori reads Tommy a King Arthur story, but Tommy would rather her read comic books. Annie calls the house to see how Lori is doing. She tells her that she has set her up on a date with Bennett. Lori cannot believe that Annie would do something like this and is completely embarrassed. She wants Annie to call him back and cancel the date, but she refuses. While in the midst of the phone call, Tommy looks outside and catches a glimpse of the shape across the street at the Wallace house. He runs back to tell Lori that he had just seen the boogeyman, but Lori naturally does not believe him. At the house, Annie spills popcorn oil on herself and has to change her clothes. While she fumbles about for a robe and some detergent, Michael Myers spies on her from outside. The Wallace's dog, Lester, catches his scent and begins barking. Michael waits for the dog to come outside, then kills it. Annie brings her sword close to the exterior laundry shed in the backyard. She hears the door suddenly creak open and thinks that it might be her boyfriend, Paul. She goes and closes the door, but when she tries to open it again a moment later, she finds that it is locked. She begins calling out to little Lindsay Wallace, but Lindsay is in the main house engrossed in a scary movie and doesn't hear her. Paul calls the house and asks Lindsay to get Annie for her. Lindsay hangs up on Paul but does indeed go back and find a babysitter. She frees Annie from the locked room and tells her that Paul called. Annie takes Lindsay across the street to Tommy's house and drops her off with Lori and Tommy. Lori doesn't like the idea of Annie unloading Lindsay on her just so she can go on a date with Paul, but Annie promises that if she does this favor for her, she might consider calling Bennett and canceling the prearranged date, thus saving Lori a lot of embarrassment. Lori finally relents and Lindsay goes into the living room to watch television with Tommy. Annie goes back to the Wallace house to get her car keys. She enters the garage and gets into the car and notices that all of the windows in the vehicle are completely fogged over. Michael Myers arises from the back seat and begins strangling Annie with his right hand. He pulls out his knife and slashes her across the throat. At Tommy's house, Tommy decides to play a prank on Lindsay and begins hiding behind a curtain. While doing so, he happens to look out the window and sees Michael carrying Annie's body back into the Wallace house. He begins shrieking and shouts to Lori that he has seen the boogeyman. Lori comes in from the other room to calm Tommy down and insists that there is no such thing as the boogeyman. By now she is getting exhausted with Tommy and threatens to send him to bed. Meanwhile, Dr. Loomis keeps a steady watch over the empty Myers house. He sees a group of kids approaching, each one daring the other to go inside the supposedly haunted house. From behind the bushes, Loomis scares them off by whispering, "Lonnie, get your ass out here." The kids run at the sound of his voice and Loomis leans back, a satisfied smile growing across his face. Sheriff Brackett appears and tells Loomis that he is losing faith in the doctor's assertions over the pending threat of Michael Myers. Loomis tells him about the stolen headstone, but Brackett dismisses it as nothing more than a Halloween prank. Linda and her boyfriend Bob pull up to the Wallace house in Bob's van. They are both somewhat drunk and there are beer cans in the van. They want to spend some time with Annie, but are also hoping to find a place where they can be intimate with one another. They quickly discover that Annie is not around. Linda calls Lori to see if she knows where Annie is. Lori tells her that she is off on a date with her boyfriend and now she is stuck watching Lindsay Wallace. Linda tells Bob the news and they both smile, knowing that they now have the house completely to themselves. They go upstairs into the master bedroom and have sex. Afterward, Linda asks Bob to go get her a beer from the van. He does so, but when he comes back, Michael Myers is waiting for him. He shoves Bob against the wall and stabs him with his knife, pinning him to the wall. Michael takes a moment to admire his work as Bob's hanging body bleeds from the wall. He then takes a bed sheet and drapes it over his body. He places Bob's eyeglasses over the top of the sheet to fool Linda into thinking that this is actually her boyfriend. He enters the upstairs bedroom wearing the sheet and Linda chuckles. She attempts to entice Bob by baring her breasts, but when the shape betrays no reaction, she grows frustrated. She then demands the beer that Bob was meant to retrieve for her, but still the shape does nothing. Angrily, Linda gets up and decides to call Lori again. As she waits for Lori to pick up the phone, the shape discards the bedsheet and glasses and begins strangling Linda with the telephone cord. On the other end of the phone, Lori, believing the caller to be Annie, warns her against playing any more phone pranks. Linda falls to the floor dead. As the evening wears on, Lori puts Tommy and Lindsay to bed. She decides to take a walk and strolls over to the Wallace house. She sees that none of the lights are on and wonders if Annie is still around. She goes inside and walks upstairs into the bedroom. She finds Annie's body sprawled across the bed. The stolen headstone of Judas Myers rests at the head of the bed. Lori begins to scream and as she turns around, finds Linda and Bob's bodies in two separate closets. Lori runs into the hallway. Michael Myers appears and slashes Lori across her right arm from behind. The impact pushes Lori forward and she then falls over the banister and down the steps, cracking her ankle in the process. She runs to the back door, but the handle is blocked with a garden rake on the opposite side, so Lori has to smash the glass to release the handle. She manages to run outside and begins screaming for somebody to help her. She goes to the neighbor's house and begins pounding on the door, but they refuse to let her in. She then hobbles back to Tommy's house as Michael stalks after her. The door is locked and Lori cannot find her keys. She bangs on the door repeatedly, shouting for Tommy to let her in. She throws a potted plant towards Tommy's window to wake him up. Tommy awakens, but not sensing the urgency in Lori's voice, takes his time getting downstairs. He finally lets her in and Lori tells him to lock Lindsay and himself in the upstairs bedroom and finds the phone is dead. After Tommy leaves, Michael appears in the living room. Laurie stabs him in the neck with a knitting needle. Laurie hobbles and pushes the kids into their room and runs into an adjacent bedroom where she hides in the closet. Michael comes after her and begins tearing through the panels of the closet. Cowering in terror, Laurie takes a coat hanger and hits Michael with it, forcing him to drop his knife. She then picks it up and runs it through his stomach. Michael collapses on the floor. Laurie goes into the bedroom and tells the kids to go down the street to the McKenzie's house. They both run out of the house screaming in fright. Loomis sees them flee and begins trotting towards Tommy's house. Laurie takes a moment to collect herself. She stands up, but as she does, Michael Myers rises as well. He comes up behind her and begins strangling her. Suddenly, Laurie rips Michael's mask off, causing him to let her go and giving her a chance to see his face before putting his mask back on. Loomis shoots Michael 6 times before Michael falls over the house's second-story balcony ledge. Laurie realizes it was the boogeyman, to which Loomis replies, "As a matter of fact, it was." Loomis looks down over the balcony to see that Michael is gone. Unsurprised, Loomis stares off into the night. Places where Michael had previously been are shown as his breathing is heard, indicating he could be anywhere. And that ends yet another episode of History Behind the Horror. Now, I would like to apologize for taking so long to post this video after posting the announcement saying that I was going to be doing this one. So hopefully part 2 will take less time, and all the rest of our videos of horror movie villains will take less time. So if you guys would like to see more of Michael Myers part 2 or anybody like Leatherface, Scream, Chucky, make sure you like the video and also share it. It lets me know that you guys want to see more of this. And like I said, hopefully they will be out a lot sooner than this video was. Now, before we end this video, I'd like to discuss something about these horror movies that I find really weird. Like Laurie and her friends, like Annie and them, when they go to high school together, because they were in high school if I'm not mistaken, or yeah, they was in high school. When you look at, like, when you grow up, when they get older and go to college and things like that, after their friends were murdered, how do you continue life as normal, you know, like a normal human if they didn't die? Like someone asks them in college, "Hey, where's your childhood friends at?" And then they say, "Oh, well, they were murdered by this notorious serial killer named Michael Myers, and I saw their dead bodies in this house. I seen one dead body in a bed with a gravestone. I seen 2 other bodies stuffed in 2 different closets, and I seen my other best friend in a car with her throat slit." Like, how do you explain this? How do you go on life as normal? Like in these horror movies when they get kidnapped, or like The Hills Have Eyes, or like no movies like that when horrible things happen to their friends or them. How do you continue life after that, as far as like normally? Not like how can you continue living, you know, don't take your life, but how do you continue to function after that, after watching your friends get butchered, or you almost getting butchered and you the only one that survived out of all your friends that went on like this trip to like Las Vegas, like Hostel, or like the movie Hostel. You know, it's kind of weird. I always thought, how did they do that? But that's just something that's will be discussed at a later time. If you guys want to make a discussion about it in the comments, I would love to read some of these comments. So, as always, thank you guys so much for watching this video. And as always, I will see you on the next episode of History Behind the Horror.